Okay, imagine this, it's a snowy afternoon in December, and the whole world feels quiet and cozy. The snow is falling softly, covering everything in a big white blanket. I'm standing in my front yard, right in the middle of a little neighborhood where houses sit close together. Kids are running around, laughing loud and throwing snowballs at each other. Their voices bounce off the snowy ground, and it makes me smile. I'm out there too, building a snowman, and I'm super excited about it. It's not some fancy snowman with a hat or scarf, just a simple one. I roll 3 big snowballs, stack them up, and stick a carrot in for a nose. Then I grab some old buttons from my pocket and press them in for eyes. It looks funny and cute, and I'm grinning like a little kid myself. To me, this is the best winter day ever. Cold air, snow everywhere, and my snowman standing tall. But not everyone thinks it's a great day. Across the street, there's a lady named Karen. She's hiding behind her perfect curtains, peeking out like a sneaky cat. You know the kind of person I mean, the ones who watch everything you do and don't like anything fun. Karen's the boss of our neighborhood group called the HOA. That's a bunch of people who make rules about how your house and yard should look. If your grass grows even a tiny bit too long, like half an inch, she'll send you a letter saying you're in trouble and owe money. She's always got her nose in everyone's business, and she loves telling people what to do. I've seen her walking around with her clipboard, frowning at messy yards or loud kids. Everyone knows Karen, and everyone tries to stay out of her way. Today, though, she's staring right at me and my snowman. I don't know it yet, but she's already mad. She doesn't like my snowman one bit, even though it's just standing there, not hurting anyone. To me, it's a happy little pile of snow with a goofy face. But to Karen, it's like I broke some big rule she made up in her head. She's watching me from her window, and her face is getting all scrunched up like she just ate something sour. I'm too busy having fun to notice her right now, though. I'm patting the snowman's head, making sure it's nice and round, and thinking about how cool it looks in my yard. The kids nearby are still playing, and one of them throws a snowball that lands near my feet. I laugh and toss one back, feeling like this day couldn't get any better. But here's the thing Karen doesn't know, my snowman isn't just a snowman. It's going to change everything for her, and she's not ready for it. She thinks she's the queen of the neighborhood, the one who's always right. She's got no idea what's coming her way. This snowman, with its carrot nose and button eyes, is about to flip her perfect little world upside down. I don't even know the whole story yet myself, I'm just out here enjoying the snow. But soon, things are going to get wild, and Karen's going to wish she'd stayed inside with her curtains closed. Now, before I tell you more, I've got a fun question for you. What would you do if someone called the cops on something as silly as a snowman? Like, imagine you're just playing outside, building something fun, and suddenly someone's mad enough to call 911 over it. Would you laugh? Would you get mad? Would you try to talk to them? I want to know what you think. This story's going to keep going, and it's going to get really exciting, so don't go anywhere. Stick around, because we're just getting started, and you won't believe what happens next. Let me set the scene a little more so you can picture it. My house is small, with a tiny front yard that's now all snowy and white. The snowman's right in the middle, facing the street, like it's saying hello to everyone who walks by. The kids are still running around, leaving little footprints everywhere. Some of them are making snow angels, and others are trying to build their own snowmen, but mine's the biggest so far. The air smells cold and fresh, and my breath makes little clouds when I talk. I'm wearing a big jacket and gloves, and my nose is a little red from the chilly wind. It's one of those days where you feel happy just being outside, watching the snow pile up. Karen's house, though. It's the opposite of fun. It's all perfect and neat, with not a single snowflake out of place. Her yard has no toys, no snowmen, no nothing, just flat snow and some boring bushes she trims all the time. Her curtains are white and fancy, and she's always peeking out from behind them. I've seen her do it before, like when I forgot to take my trash can in fast enough. She'd write me a note about it, saying it's against the rules. That's Karen, she lives for rules. And right now, she's decided my snowman is breaking one of them. I don't know what rule she's thinking of, but I can tell she's not happy. She's probably already planning how she's going to yell at me or tell the HOA I'm a troublemaker. I'm still smiling, though, because I don't care what she thinks yet. My snowman's awesome, and I'm proud of it. The carrot nose is a little crooked, and the buttons are uneven, but that's what makes it special. I step back to look at it, hands on my hips, and nod to myself. Perfect, I say out loud, even though no one's really listening. The kids nearby cheer and keep playing, and for a minute, everything feels peaceful. The sun's starting to go down, turning the sky all pink and orange, and the snow looks like it's glowing. It's a beautiful day, and I'm just happy to be part of it. But Karen? She's not happy. She's about to make this day a whole lot crazier, and I don't even know it yet. She's still behind her window, watching me like a hawk. Her phone's probably already in her hand, ready to call someone and complain. She thinks she's going to win, like she always does. But this time, she's wrong. This snowman's got a secret, and it's going to surprise her big time. What's the secret? How's a snowman going to cause so much trouble? You're going to find out soon, because this story's about to get really good. So, what do you think so far? Are you ready for the next part? Let's keep going. Karen didn't wait a single second. I had just pushed the carrot into my snowman's face to make its nose when her front door burst open with a big bang. She came stomping out, her fluffy slippers crunching through the snow. Her face was all red and mad, like she'd just seen something terrible. That's an unapproved structure, she shouted, pointing at my snowman like it was a monster. Her voice was loud and sharp, cutting through the cold air. She held her phone up high, waving it around like it was some kind of sword or magic wand. The HOA rules say no decorations over 3 feet tall without permission, she yelled. I just stood there, staring at her with my mouth open a little. I wanted to laugh so bad, but I held it in. My snowman wasn't even that big. It was maybe 4 feet tall if you counted the carrot sticking out of its head, but that didn't seem like a big deal to me. 3 feet, 4 feet, what's the difference? It's just a snowman. I couldn't believe she was making such a fuss over something so silly. The kids nearby stopped throwing snowballs for a second to look at her, their eyes wide. Even they knew this was crazy. You're ridiculous, I said, shaking my head. My voice was calm, but inside, I was starting to get annoyed. I didn't want to fight with her, I just wanted to enjoy my snowman and the snowy day. But Karen? She wasn't done, not even close. Her eyes got all small and squinted, like she was trying to shoot lasers at me. She stepped closer, jabbing her finger in the air right at my face. I'm calling 911, she said, her voice low and serious now. This is a safety hazard. A safety hazard? My snowman? I almost dropped the handful of snow I was holding. It was made of snow, a carrot, and some old buttons. How could that hurt anyone? I rolled my eyes so hard I thought they might roll right out of my head. Yeah, right, I muttered under my breath, turning back to my snowman. I started smoothing out the snow on its side, patting it down with my gloves. I figured she was just talking big, trying to scare me. Karen loved acting like she was the boss of everything. I wasn't going to let her ruin my fun. But here's the thing, Karen didn't know I wasn't as dumb as she thought. She saw me as just some guy who moved into the neighborhood, someone she could boss around like everyone else. She didn't know I had a trick up my sleeve, something she'd never guess. While she was yelling and waving her phone, I stayed cool. I didn't argue back or yell. I just kept working on my snowman, pretending she wasn't even there. The snow felt cold and soft under my hands, and I smiled a little to myself. Let her call whoever she wants, I thought. This was going to be interesting. Karen stomped back toward her house, her slippers kicking up little puffs of snow. She was muttering stuff I couldn't hear, but I bet it was about how awful I was and how my snowman was breaking all her precious rules. I glanced over at her as she marched up her porch steps. Her curtains were still open a crack, and I could see her shadow moving inside. She was probably already dialing her phone, ready to tattle on me to the police. I shook my head again and added another button to my snowman's face, just for fun. The kids across the yard giggled and went back to their snowball fight, not caring about Karen's big scene. The air was getting colder now, and the sky was turning a little gray. My snowman stood there, looking happy with its crooked carrot nose and button eyes. I stepped back to check it out, brushing snow off my gloves. It wasn't perfect, but I liked it. To me, it was a fun thing to do on a snowy day. To Karen, though, it was like I'd built a giant tower or something dangerous. I didn't get it. How could a snowman be a safety hazard? Was she worried it would fall over and block the sidewalk? Or maybe she thought someone would trip over it? It didn't make any sense, but that was Karen always finding a problem where there wasn't one. I could hear her voice now, loud and snappy, coming from her porch. She was talking to someone on the phone, probably 911, just like she said. Yes, there's a structure in the yard across the street. I heard her say. It's against HOA rules, and it's dangerous. I rolled my eyes again and kicked at a little pile of snow by my feet. Dangerous? Really? I wanted to march over there and tell her to chill out, but I didn't. I stayed quiet, letting her dig her own hole. She didn't know it yet, but she was about to look really silly. The kids nearby were watching again, whispering to each other. One of them, a little boy with a red hat, ran up to me. Is she really calling the cops? He asked, his eyes big. I shrugged and grinned. Guess so, I said. All because of my snowman. He laughed and ran back to his friends, shouting, she's calling the police on a snowman. They all started giggling, and it made me feel better. At least someone thought this was as funny as I did. Karen's voice got louder. Yes, officer, I need someone here right now, she said into her phone. She sounded so proud, like she was saving the neighborhood from some big disaster. I could picture her standing there, one hand on her hip, the other holding the phone tight. Her fluffy slippers were probably soaked by now, but she didn't care. She was on a mission to get rid of my snowman, and nothing was going to stop her. Or so she thought. I kept smoothing the snow, making my snowman's head nice and round. I wasn't scared of her or her phone call. Let her call the cops, I thought. Let's see what happens. The truth was, I had a secret something Karen didn't know about me or my snowman. She thought she was so smart, always telling everyone what to do. But this time, she was wrong. She didn't have a clue what was really going on, and that made me smile even more. The wind picked up a little, blowing snow across my yard. My snowman wobbled a tiny bit, but it stayed standing. I gave it a pat and whispered, hang in there, buddy. Karen was still on her porch, talking fast into her phone. She thought she was winning, but she wasn't. Something big was coming, and she was about to find out she'd messed with the wrong snowman and the wrong guy. What was my secret? How was this going to turn out? You'll see soon, because this story's just heating up. Time went by slow, like the minutes were crawling. I was still standing by my snowman, brushing some extra snow off its side, when I heard its sirens. They started soft, way off in the distance, but they got louder and louder until they were right here in our little neighborhood. I looked up, and there was Karen, standing on her porch with her arms crossed. She had a big, smug smile on her face, like she'd just won $1 million or something. Her fluffy slippers were all wet now, but she didn't care. She thought she was the winner because the police were coming, and it was all because of her phone call. Sure enough, a police car rolled up to the curb. Its red and blue lights were flashing bright, lighting up the snowy yards and houses. 2 officers climbed out, one tall and one shorter, both wearing dark uniforms and hats. They looked serious, but not mad or anything. I could feel eyes on me now, not just Karen's, but the neighbors too. Curtains twitched, and faces peeked out from behind windows all down the street. Everyone wanted to know what was going on. Was I in trouble? Did I do something bad? That's probably what they were thinking, and I could almost hear them whispering to each other inside their warm houses. Karen didn't wait a second. She marched right over to the cops, her slippers squishing in the snow. She pointed at my snowman with a big, dramatic swing of her arm, like it was some scary beast or a giant problem. That thing's blocking the sidewalk, she screeched, her voice so loud it made the kids nearby stop playing for a minute. It's a danger to the community. She kept going, waving her hands around and talking fast. I told him it's against HOA rules, but he wouldn't listen. It's too tall, and someone could trip over it or get hurt. I just stood there, watching her make a big scene. My snowman wasn't even on the sidewalk, it was in my yard, right in the middle, nowhere near where people walked. And a danger? It was snow with a carrot nose and button eyes. I wanted to laugh, but I didn't. Instead, I shrugged my shoulders and stayed quiet. My hands were in my pockets, keeping warm, and I didn't say a word. The officers turned their heads to look at my snowman. They stared at it for a second, then looked over at me. Their faces didn't give anything away, no smiles, no frowns, just blank looks. But here's what Karen didn't see: I wasn't worried at all. My face was calm, like nothing big was happening. I didn't yell back at her or try to argue. I just stood there, cool as could be, while she went on and on about how terrible my snowman was. She was too busy talking to notice how relaxed I looked. She didn't catch the little thing that happened next, either. One of the cops, the tall one, gave me a tiny nod. It was super quick, just a dip of his head, so small you'd miss it if you weren't paying attention. It was like he was saying, "Hey, I know you," without using words. Karen didn't see that nod. She didn't know we had a secret, me and that cop. She was too caught up in her own loud complaining to figure out something big was bubbling up, ready to pop. The kids started playing again, tossing snowballs and giggling. The shorter cop walked a little closer to my snowman, bending down to look at it. He tilted his head, like he was trying to see what the fuss was about. Karen kept talking, her voice getting higher and squeakier. "I've lived here for years, and we've never had trouble like this," she said. "He just moved in, and now he's breaking all the rules. That snowman's got to go." She stomped her foot, and a little puff of snow flew up around her slipper. The tall cop scratched his chin and glanced at me again, but he didn't say anything yet. I shifted my feet in the snow, feeling the cold creep into my boots. My snowman stood there, looking happy and silly with its crooked carrot nose. The buttons I'd stuck on for eyes were a little uneven, but that made it more fun, I thought. The wind blew a little, and some snowflakes danced around us. I could tell the neighbors were still watching. Curtains moved, and I saw a kid press his nose against a window, fogging up the glass. They probably thought I was about to get yelled at or hauled off by the cops. But I wasn't scared. I knew something they didn't, something Karen didn't either. Karen finally stopped talking for a second to take a big breath. She glared at me, her eyes all narrow and mean. "You think this is funny, don't you?" she snapped. I shrugged again, not saying anything. I didn't think it was funny, not really, but I wasn't going to let her get to me. She huffed and turned back to the cops. "Officers, you need to do something about this right now," she demanded. "Tell him to take it down, or arrest him." The tall cop spoke up, his voice calm. "Ma'am, we'll take a look," he said. He walked over to my snowman, standing next to the shorter cop. They both stared at it, like they were trying to decide if it was really a problem. Karen crossed her arms again, smirking like she'd already won. She thought the cops were here to back her up, to tell me I was wrong and she was right. She had no idea what was really going on. I rocked back on my heels, my hands still in my pockets. The cold air stung my cheeks, but I didn't mind. I was waiting, watching, knowing this wasn't going to end the way Karen thought. That little nod from the cop stuck in my head. It was a sign, something small, but important. Karen was ranting away, sure she was in charge, but she didn't see the storm coming her way. The officers didn't look mad at me. They didn't look like they were here to cause trouble for me. Something was up, and it was bigger than a snowman. The kids laughed again, their voices ringing out in the quiet. A snowball flew past me and landed with a soft plop near the police car. The neighbors kept peeking, and Karen kept talking. But me? I stayed quiet, letting it all play out. Something big was brewing, and I could feel it. What was it? Why wasn't I worried? Karen was about to find out, and it was going to be a surprise she'd never forget. "Stick around, this is getting good." The tall officer finally opened his mouth. He looked right at Karen and said, "Ma'am, we're not here for the snowman." His voice was calm and slow, like he was talking to a kid who didn't get it. Karen's jaw dropped so fast it looked like it might fall off her face. "What?" she sputtered, her voice all shaky and loud. She blinked at him, then at the other cop, then back at him again, like she couldn't believe what she just heard. That's when I decided it was my turn. I stepped forward, brushing some snow off my jacket with my hand. It fell to the ground in little clumps. "They're here because I called them first," I said. My voice was steady, not loud or scared, just clear and strong. Karen's eyes got huge, like two big round moons. She stared at me, her mouth still open, not saying anything for once. The neighbor's curtains twitched even more now. I could almost feel all those eyes peeking out, watching us from behind their windows. They were probably thinking, what's happening? What's he talking about? The kids stopped throwing snowballs and stood there, quiet, looking at me and the cops. Even the wind seemed to stop blowing for a second. It was like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath, waiting to see what came next. See, here's the big secret, I wasn't just some random guy who liked building snowmen. I wasn't even a regular neighbor who just moved in to live a quiet life. I'd been watching Karen for weeks ever since I got here. I wasn't who she thought I was. I was an undercover cop. That means I was a police officer, but I kept it hidden. No one knew, not the neighbors, not the kids, and definitely not Karen. I didn't wear a uniform or drive a police car. I looked like any other guy: jeans, a jacket, a goofy grin. But I had a job to do, and that job was all about Karen. And my snowman? Oh, it wasn't just a pile of snow with a carrot nose and button eyes. It had a trick inside it, a tiny camera, so small you'd never see it unless you knew where to look. I tucked it right into the snowman's head when I built it. That camera was recording everything Karen did, every move she made. It was like a little spy, sitting there all quiet and sneaky, watching her while she thought she was so smart. Turns out, Karen wasn't the perfect HOA queen she pretended to be. She'd been up to some bad stuff, really shady things. She was stealing packages that got delivered to people's porches. She was harassing neighbors, yelling at them for no reason, making their lives miserable. And the worst part? She was even messing with the HOA money, taking cash that was supposed to fix the playground or clean the streets and keeping it for herself. I'd been gathering evidence, like a detective in a movie. For weeks, I watched her, wrote stuff down, and let that little camera do its job. I saw her sneak a package off Mrs. Johnson's porch 2 weeks ago. I heard her scream at little Timmy for riding his bike too close to her yard. And I found out about the missing HOA money when I talked to some neighbors who were too scared to say anything out loud. I kept it all quiet, waiting for the right moment. And today? Today was the day it all came crashing down on her, like a big snowball rolling downhill. Karen still didn't get it. She shook her head fast, her fluffy slippers sliding a little in the snow. No, 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 she yelled. You're here for him. For that stupid snowman. It's against the rules. She pointed at me again, her finger shaking. The tall cop raised his hand, like he was telling her to stop. Ma'am, calm down, he said. We've got bigger things to deal with. The shorter cop nodded and stepped closer to Karen, his face serious now. I took another step forward, snow crunching under my boots. Karen, I said, looking right at her. You've been breaking a lot more rules than me. Her face went pale, like all the color drained out of it. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out. The tall cop pulled a little notebook from his pocket and flipped it open. We've got reports of stolen packages, he said, reading from the page. Complaints about you yelling at people. And some funny stuff going on with the HOA bank account. Karen's eyes darted around, like she was looking for a way to run. That's not true, she shouted. He's lying. He's making it up. But I wasn't lying, and she knew it. The camera in my snowman had seen it all, every sneaky move, every mean word. I reached into my jacket and pulled out my badge. It was shiny and gold, with my name and police written on it. I held it up so everyone could see. The kids gasped. The neighbors' curtains stopped moving, they were probably too shocked to hide anymore. I've been watching you, Karen, I said. And so has my snowman. I tapped the snowman's head with my hand, right where the camera was hiding. It's got everything on video. The packages, the yelling, the money, all of it. The shorter cop nodded again. We've seen the footage, he said. It's all real. Karen's legs wobbled, and she grabbed the railing on her porch to hold herself up. No, she cried. You can't do this. I'm in charge here. But she wasn't in charge anymore, not even close. The tall cop put his notebook away and pulled out a pair of handcuffs. They jingled in his hand, shiny and cold. Karen Miller, he said, you're under arrest for theft and harassment. The kids cheered, like they were watching a superhero movie. The neighbors started coming out of their houses now, stepping onto their porches to see better. Karen shook her head over and over, muttering, This can't be happening. But it was happening, and there was no way out. My snowman stood there, still smiling with its button eyes, like it knew it had done a good job. It wasn't just a snowman anymore, it was the star of the show. Karen's face turned super red, redder than the carrot nose on my snowman. She looked like she was about to explode as the tall officer pulled out a pair of shiny handcuffs. They clicked in his hands, and her eyes got wide. "You can't do this," she yelled, her voice loud and squeaky. She waved her arms around, still in her wet fluffy slippers, but the cops didn't care. They weren't listening to her anymore. The shorter cop started talking, reading her rights from a little card. "You have the right to stay quiet," he said, calm and steady. Karen didn't stay quiet, though. She kept shouting, "This is snowman injustice. You're all wrong." But no one was on her side now. The officers grabbed her arms gently but firmly and started walking her to the squad car. Its lights were still flashing red and blue, making the snow look all colorful. Karen dragged her feet, kicking up little bits of snow, still yelling about how unfair this was. "I'm the HOA boss," she cried. "You can't arrest me." But they could, and they did. They opened the car door, helped her inside, and shut it with a loud thunk. She banged on the window with her hands, her face all scrunched up, but the car started moving. The neighbors watched as it rolled down the street, taking Karen away. Then, they started clapping slow at first, then louder and louder. Some even cheered, like they were at a big game and their team just won. I looked at my snowman, standing there in the middle of my yard. Its button eyes were still in place, and that carrot nose stuck out, a little crooked but proud. It was like my snowman knew it had won, like it was smiling at me, happy to be the hero. The kids ran over, jumping up and down in the snow. "You got her," one of them shouted, a little girl with a pink hat. "She's gone." They laughed and started making snowballs again, tossing them in the air like a celebration. The neighbors weren't hiding anymore. They stepped out of their houses, onto their porches, and some even walked into the street. Old Mr. Jenkins from next door gave me a big thumbs up. Mrs. Johnson, whose package Karen stole, clapped her hands and smiled wide. Everyone was happy, and it felt good. I turned to the crowd, brushing more snow off my jacket, and grinned. "Guess the HOA's getting a new leader," I said, loud enough for them to hear. The cheers got even bigger, like a wave of noise rolling over the snowy yards. People nodded and clapped more, excited that Karen wasn't in charge anymore. My snowman just stood there, quiet and still, but it wasn't just a decoration now. It was the hero of the day, the little snow pile that helped catch a bad guy. The sun was going down, turning the sky all orange and pink, and the snow sparkled under the streetlights. The neighborhood felt lighter, like a big weight was gone. Karen couldn't boss anyone around anymore, and that was because of me and my snowman. Justice was served, and it felt awesome. Okay, so here's the big idea: sometimes the tiniest things like my snowman can make the hugest surprises happen. Karen thought she was the boss of everything, always telling people what to do. She looked at me and saw just some guy with a snowman, nothing special. But she was so wrong. She didn't see me coming, and she didn't know my snowman was more than just snow. It was sneaky and smart, and it helped me show everyone who she really was. That's the cool lesson here: don't judge people by what they look like on the outside. The quiet ones, the ones who don't talk big or act loud, they might be the ones who change it all. Think about it. Karen thought she knew everything about me, but she didn't. She didn't know I was watching her, waiting for the right time to stop her mean tricks. My snowman looked small and silly, but it was the hero that caught her. So maybe the next time you see someone quiet or something little, don't think they're not important. They could be hiding something amazing, just like I was. You never know what's really going on until the surprise comes out. What about you? Have you ever had a moment where you proved someone wrong? Like, maybe they thought you couldn't do something, but you did it anyway? Or maybe you surprised someone who didn't expect much from you. I'd love to hear your stories. Tell me about it down below. I'm super excited to read them. This was a fun adventure, and I've got more stories coming. Stick around, because I'll see you in the next one. Keep being awesome.